So my talk is not going to be as fun as the other ones. It's not going to be around, okay. It's not going to be around anything. Okay, no. So my name is Franco. I work for Zalando. And yeah, I don't have a bio or whatever. I've been around, so it's fine. So I'm going to talk about people instead of technologies. Basically, it's like what I notice working in startups and then for big companies is like the more people involved in the change, the harder it is to change it, right? So the greater is the risk to change something. So a good system architecture should consider the amount of people that need to align for a change to happen. So this talk will be around people. So it's not that fun, but we can go through it. So basically, it's like a tale of growing fast. So basically, if you have a startup or whatever, you start with like something very crappy, and then you start to scale, right? And sometimes the speed takes over your life, basically. And a common pattern to grow faster is adopting microservices. In Zalando, we have microservices. So my experience will be mostly around that. And it's not, a disclaimer is like, so if someone asks like, which architecture should I use? It always depends. So there is not like a good answer for it. Okay, so one day we decided to break our monolithic WordPress Magento how this even works system into microservices. So this is like more or less. So the first thing I saw sometimes that happens is like they break the backend. So the front end still is like in applications or wherever, and then the backend they split it in customer, product, campaign, for example. Then OpenAPI sometimes is used for documentation, and the clients have to make their own calls to those services and aggregate inside the client code. So all those lines there are calls, and all those lines are also people, because when the customer team will change something, they will have to communicate with products because they're using something for the wish list, and then they will have to communicate with the web and the iOS app, and someone will make a bug because there is no introspection in REST APIs. I mean, there could be, but be honest, no one is going to implement it, so it's going to be a mess. So the good thing about splitting is like the services are going to be independent, the code base is going to be small, there will be some fault isolation, and it's going to be independently scalable, and the teams can grow, and hiring becomes easier, which is the biggest thing when you're a small team. Yeah, the bad part, we already talked about it. Each new microservice team will need to communicate and align with clients of the changes, and also the aggregation of data are repeated across different clients also, right? So if someone is like, for example, checking the products for a customer, they will have to do the same calls across all the different clients, right? So then, and then we need to go faster, and we need to add A/B testing, right? And if you are app developers, doing this in the app is really, really slow, and you have to deliver things, so you do it in the web. And you have to grow your web team and go as fast as possible in the beginning. So what do? You do sometimes micro-frontends, or sometimes you just split your frontend, but in the end, the thing is like you will end up with like probably 3 or 4 applications. So this is the first type of kind of good solution that you can do. This was what the industry was doing for a lot of years in my experience. Basically, you have this general purpose backend, also called aggregation layer, or yeah, so it's like a proxy sometimes. So basically, you create this team, and they are going to manage that, right? So now, if you see, the communication is only one team before the client and one team with the upstream services, right? So now it's easier. There is less communication, but what is the problems? So this is the good part. So only one API for the clients to call, can abstract away new versions of replacement of upstream service, of course, yeah. If we have products, and now we have products version 2, if you have a general purpose backend, the clients don't need to know. But the part, so you have a single point of failure. As the client application grows, satisfying the need of each becomes harder and harder, and then you need more alignment. And then this is a problem that a lot of teams face, and I think the most famous teams that faced this problem were SoundCloud and Spotify. They came with the idea of creating tribes or backend for frontends. So backend for frontend is like these vertical teams where the teams will work across the whole stack. And then each application will have a backend for frontend, which is basically doing the aggregation, right? Now, the good part of this is like, now you can go fast. This is classic for any team going fast. Zalando used to have Mosaic as an architecture. And yeah, and this is basically, it will let your team to grow super fast, but it will introduce a lot of issues. But if the split is well done, there is also way less cross-alignment because the teams now, they are vertical, right? So in general, is much better. But the part that are bad, like you have the duplication of efforts. So you have inconsistent customer experience. Sometimes you have different things going in different ways. And then adding a feature across customer journey is a mess, right? So if you have a feature, for example, a new flag, just a new flag in products, it's going to be a mess because you will have to align with every single team. So how do we solve it in Zalando? We have GraphQL aggregation layer, which is very similar to the first solution that I showed, but in this case, the thing is like you have the data graph, and then the client will subscribe to the change in the graph. You talk about introspection, right? This is a big part of it. Now you have less alignment because the clients can generate the data, right? So this is much better. So you have faster deployments also. It's easier for the clients, developers to find and access data in one place. And the teams can create now features across the user journey, right? Still, it's a single point of failure, and still changes in the architecture and schemas are still going to be approved by one team, and this is going to be a bottleneck. And this is something like you have to live with. And this is the downside of this system. Now, what about the micro-frontends, right? So Zalando introduced like a GraphQL client that is called rendering engine. And basically, its primary purpose is like to resolve and render a tree of entities for a given request. So, you know, GraphQL is a query, and then the response is always going to be entities. Each entity has an ID, and it's going to solve. So, for example, how it looks like. So, for example, this is a render. So this is a carousel, right? And then, and then it's using this tile. So we have tile or views. And then we have, for example, with queries, where we pass the query for this part of the render. So this is for the carousel in one part of the website. And then in this case, we can do some process of the data. The data will be already typed. So that's also good. Your developers will not have to type anything, will come for free. And then with render will be the part that, like the view of the React component, basically. And as you see here, you can just say simple carousel, which is a library that another platform team is doing. And then this also ensures consistency across the user journey. So So basically now each one of these parts of here is like a render. So the outfit view, for example, has outfit highlights, and then it has product card horizontal. All of those are small renderers. And now many teams across Zalando can actually share the code, right? So they can, for example, let's say now about this flag that we have to add, right? This flag is a renderer. So now the team that is working on like Zalando Plus, that is like a Amazon Prime idea, has to add the flags to all the customer journey. Before, they would have to talk to around 20 teams. Now they just can change one render. And then how it works more or less. So this is a request. So for example, you request outfits with some ID. Then we have a skipper that is like an Nginx. And then this will give the outfits ID to the rendering engine. Rendering engine will talk to the fashion store API, which is the GraphQL aggregation layer. This, of course, is talking to a lot of services in the backend, but of course we have like caching and all, and it's giving the response. Now you see like there are a lot of arrows there. It's because like a query will come in the beginning, and you say like, give me the query resolve the query for these outfits, right? And then the fashion store API will give us response as it comes, right? So for example, in this part, it starts with the top and outfit view, and we can already stream the content. So you're going to strip the content top down, and it's going to be a representation of the query. So each level in the query is going to be assigned to a renderer, and each render is going to be streamed to the content. So the user has information right away. So this is very good for conversion rates and all that, because the user can see the page right away. So that's why you have this, we resolve entities, then we have some rendering rules to match it with renderers, and then it renders, goes back to rendering engine, which has now, after some renders are applied, now we say like, okay, we probably have to call again FashionStore API because there are some rendering rules, and then this is like a recursive approach for rendering. You can think of Relay.js if you are familiar with, is kind of similar idea and concept. So what is the good things is there is less alignments. The teams can reuse the renderers and or can build on top of other renderers. It's easier to create experience and deploy across the user journey. There's less duplication. There is consistent UX design. And then we also have a platform team for doing that. So we get the page performance analysis. So for example, we integrate a live step. We have client-side metrics. We operate it. We manage the Kubernetes cluster that manage all of this. So the teams only focus on creating the user experience. The bad part is like there is some learning curve. It's a new framework, and we don't have as many documentation as we like, right? So at the beginning, especially the users will have to learn a new framework. So it's like learning Next.js or Relay or whatever. So for new employees especially, they will have to learn this framework too. Then it's also the single point of failure. The single point of failure, I will not talk much here, but we also rely on infrastructure to bottle this. So in we use Kubernetes. So we have stack sets for each part, so we can pretty much isolate each page. So it's not such a big issue. And then it has some less flexibility versus the backend for frontends, because now let's say if one team in the product page wants to add push notifications, they have to ask the rendering engine team to add push notifications, right? And this is more or less how it looks, the interface framework altogether, right? So we have the first, the layer on the top is the Zalando data and the recommendation system. The recommendation system will like show different renders per user, which is also very powerful. So that means like your homepage is going to be totally different in Zalando. And then on top of that, you have this GraphQL API or this aggregation layer. Then you have the rendering engine, and then you have the renders. The part of Fragment and Mosaic templates are the old architecture, and we still support it. So it's backward compatible. And then on top of that, you have the customer-facing applications, and you have the Zalando Web and the Zalando app. Basically, also you can see that we have the performance monitoring on the side, the Zalando design system, we have the A/B testing platform, and the integrated monitoring. So with that, we remove all the operations from the developers. So the developers, they have to focus on just create the experiences. So we like the feature teams when they are creating features for our customers to only focus on our customers. So they do all the customer interviews, all those things, instead of being, I have to scale my service or not, or all of that. So if you want to learn more, there are a lot of, in the Zalando website, I think this slides will be somewhere, so I guess you can reach it or you can ask me. If you want to work on this, we have open positions for both of those teams, and just the Zalando, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Did you say that you want to take questions or rather no?
No, yeah, I can take questions.
Okay, well then.
But does anybody has questions?
Has a question?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I understood that correctly. The platform team is both scaling the rendering engine, but also building the framework?
Yes. So it's operating and creating the framework.
Right.
Yes.
So they're basically operating everybody else's stuff. In a way.
In a way. But also, like, for example, how it works is, so we have we have a microservice architecture, and then there are other services, right? And then what we do is like we use Lightstep, that is like open tracing, and then each render has a span, right? So for example, if the render of the product page is failing, we alert product page team, right?
Yeah.
So it's also like that. At the beginning, of course, everything was relying on the rendering engine team, but now it's like this,
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you. Okay. You're too far, that's why.
You talked about streaming.
Yes.
So, are you using your own protocol for that, or is it similar to the defer protocol of GraphQL? Like, did I understand correctly that you are streaming content step by step when it's available?
Yes.
Yeah.
But we don't. So we are not yet streaming the GraphQL query, right? So we do several queries, right? And then we have batch of queries to GraphQL. And then the thing is, like, for example, I give you the ID, and then it's like, okay, here you have the content. And then the next render will say, okay, I also need to trigger this. The streaming is in Node.js. Basic streaming is we're just like buffering content.
And you're mostly having static pages generated out of that anyway, I guess? Or is there even a situation where the user is opening Zalando and an actual GraphQL query is sent from the front end?
So it's dynamic. It's not static. Okay. Yeah. But the front end. So if you talk about front end, you mean like the rendering engine? We have server-side rendering that does the calls and then it comes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then regarding the stitching or federation, like, where's your source of truth for your schema?
Yeah.
Is that basically defined? Is the source of truth within the microservices?
No.
Or is it one central service and then the microservices serve into that?
Yes.
Okay.
So the thing is like, this is, I didn't talk about this, but it's interesting, like the aggregation layer of the GraphQL, right? They define the schema. Now they have a contribution model. So for example, if you're from the customer team, then you have to come there, do a proposal. There is a guidelines, do a proposal, and then you should write your own resolvers and parts of the schema for that, and the team will approve it. So the team is more like they create the platform, and then they're like saying, is this okay or not, right? Rendering engine, the same. The people can create the renderers, and then in general, if it's not touching nothing from other people, then we're okay. Also, we use GitHub owners. So then each team, that touch a file, then alerts other teams, and you cannot merge something unless everybody who is related to that piece of code approve it.
Are some parts of that like merging even declarative, or is all of that code? Code.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And now, can you pass it to that guy?
Yeah.
You already answered it because I wanted to ask how you solve the problem of the common language or the common business language, so that there are no conflicting words in the schema.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, like, as I say, like, this is a lot about people, right? So it's like a lot of communication. It's a company with 2,000 developers, and you have to communicate. Yeah. No more questions? Oh, there is one. Can you put it? Not yet. So I would like to say it's still not in an open sourceable type. We are actually working in rendering engine to make this more modular. Basically, we went in the rendering engine, I think, like around 3 years ago, more or less, and it changed, right? And we went fast, and the code is not the best yet to be open source. But now I think we're improving, and the team is growing, and that's why we're hiring. And I think we are going to be okay to open source this in the next years. There is also some politics with the business people to see if we can do it, of course, as always. But Zalando is very open with open source. Yeah, thank you.
So will that basically be Mosaic 2.0?
Yeah, they didn't want to call like that because it's like completely different in a way. So Mosaic, the idea of Mosaic was this very light center. So it was like, everything was distributed. So Mosaic was like capitalism, and this is more like communism. Everything is centralized. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But do you use this communism and capitalism together? I mean, you have Lotus in Mosaic, and also you have this new structure. How do you migrate?
Yeah, that's very interesting. So basically, do you know the Mosaic architecture? Or yeah, so basically Mosaic, you can imagine that you inject a script, right, a tag into an HTML, and then it's going to do the call, right? So more or less, right? And it has another part that is for the server and another part for the client side, right? So basically what we did is like we create a part that, because a renderer is basically a renderer with the script inside, and also doing the Mosaic part. So it works like a fragment. So we used to call them fragment before GraphQL. But so let's say it's just a render. It doesn't use the render API, but it's just rendering the content that we came from the other places. At this moment, I think there are only a few modules, but this year we migrate the catalog page, that was the last page, from the main customer journey. So I think we're almost 90% in interface framework already.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.